got it.
We'll go ahead and get started here, but thanks for all you guys for coming out tonight. It's really great to have you here on the actual 50th anniversary of our election to incorporate as a town. So thank you guys for being here. My name is Mike McClanahan. I'm the town manager for Kingston Springs, and I am very clearly the least qualified person to talk about the history or introduce any of these folks, but it's an honor to be here and to start seeing some of the faces that look familiar. But I just wanted to take a moment, and I think we had a presentation. Some of our elected officials are here. If you wouldn't mind just joining me, Mayor Tony Gross, Gary Corlew here, our city commissioner.
Since it's early, need to be right now.
So I think we have two presentations. The first is from State Representative Mary Littleton. And Senator Kerry Roberts.
First, what a great night. You guys did a great job. It's a wonderful crowd for a special night. 50 years is very special. I love coming into the town and driving up or walking up and down Main Street. In fact, I try to park as far away from everything so I can just walk up and down the sidewalks because it's a beautiful town. I've enjoyed visiting and being a part of the body here as a state representative. So I just have a proclamation here that I'm going to read. Whereas it is fitting that the members of the legislative body recognize these cities, towns, and communities within Tennessee that are celebrating momentous occasions and marking notable historical events. And whereas Kingston Springs is one such town which is celebrating the 50th anniversary. And whereas the winning vote of the citizens, Kingston Springs became the township on December 14, 1965, and whereas the town originally had 290 residents and 3 commissioners, Raymond, Mays, John Fry, and Terry Moore, and whereas for the past 50 years, Kingston Springs has stood at the beacon of all that is good about Tennessee and its residents and among the state's finest citizens. We are honored to join with these sterling individuals in their recognition of the, I'm sorry, I forgot my glasses. On this occasion now, therefore, I, Beth Harwell, Speaker of the House of Representatives of the 190th General Assembly and the state of Tennessee, at the request and in compliance with Representative Mary Littleton and Senator Kerry Roberts, do hereby proclaim that we join with the citizens of Kingston Springs in celebrating the town's 50th anniversary, extending our best within for a joyous and memorable celebration. Proclaimed in Nashville, Tennessee on this 19th day of November 2015.
Additionally, we're very fortunate to have Congressman Jim Cooper with us here.
I'm honored to be here tonight. I was afraid I was going to have to be in Washington, D.C. tonight, and I'm so glad to be here. I'm going to be there tomorrow night, though, so I'll get the press tomorrow. This is from the Congressional Record. We inserted in the official record of the Congress of the United States because we wanted to make sure that Kingston Springs was recognized. We duplicated some of the material that Mary read out, but we also talked about here with a walkable and historic downtown, 173 acres of parks and trails, a vibrant business community, adventurous outdoor recreation, and highly rated fire protection service. Its charm and character appeal both to residents and the entire Middle Tennessee community. In fact, Kingston Springs was recently named one of the safest cities in Tennessee and one of the top Nashville suburbs. It's a privilege to represent the good people of Kingston Springs. I congratulate the entire community on a successful 50 years and wish you even more success to come.
And I just wanted to take a moment and if any of our current elected officials want to add anything to this.
Well, like Mike said, I brought one of the least qualified to be here talking as well, as far as a lot of you have been here a lot longer than I have. It's so great to see such a great turnout. I was so excited to see Miss Virginia brought her material over there because she brought a picture of her father along with it. And he's actually the gentleman that built the house I live in, so it's really neat to see that, and see all the history come together here tonight. So once again, thanks to everyone. Thank you, Senator Roberts and Representative Littleton and Congressman Cooper for coming out and honoring our little town tonight. And thank you all for coming out here. And I hope you enjoyed the guest speakers and the panel here, so they can give you a little more insight and history that I have available. So thanks, Mike. Good evening.
Well, it was really neat getting to see, all of the things that folks had brought and just kind of having people that have that connection with something physical. The other part of really kind of anything historic, especially for a small town, is the connection that people have with one another. So it's really exciting that we've got such a depth of it here that we can be able to bring you 5 folks that really have a history with the community, really that know a lot about what's going on, and I guess we'll just kind of go down the row here and we'll take some questions. And at the end of this, if any of you have any questions, feel free to chime in. We are taping this, so the town has a YouTube channel. So if you like some of the tall tales that were told and you want to fact check, there's an opportunity for that later. But without further ado, how about an introduction to our panel, Miss Virginia Harris. Tell us about where you live and how long you've been here. And
it's easy for me to know how long I've been here because I just had a birthday. I've been here 87 years. I've lived here all year. If I were to get started, I could keep you all here all night. But when I was born, no one went to the hospital to have babies. And Dr. Harris, my father-in-law, who was dead when I married him, Robert, delivered me. And he would laugh and say that he went from Joe Dillenham's house to our house, and that he kept him busy. And so I was born, and I didn't go to the hospital. But I really enjoyed living here. But I tell you, since the city has come in here, it's a lot of improvement. It was always, the streets were the worst thing. There were mud holes everywhere. And if anybody, Robert used to walk up to our house and he'd be muddy when he got there. And it was just mud. And people, and Daddy would spray, would get someone to come spray it in the summertime in front of our house where the dust would just eat you up. And when you went to work, after I got grown and went to work, everybody tried to get out of town first because if you didn't, you ate all the dust from everywhere.
The next panelist is Carl Francis.
Well, I've been here my whole life also, and the 2 ladies that sit opposite of me have influenced me a lot. I mean, Virginia Sue was my godmother. She took care of me. When my grandmother, of course, my grandmother raised me and my grandfather here at Kingston Springs. And when my grandmother passed away, she came in and took care of me. And I was just 5, 6 years old and really needed some help. And her and Marvin Crouch both helped me. But Sis's mother was our teacher up at the old Kingston Springs Elementary, Miss Pauline. And a lot of us guys, and Don Ray sitting back here, we would skip school at lunchtime and go down to the Beard's grocery store. And back then, there were 3 grocery stores in Kingston Springs, if you believe it or not. I mean, you had J.D. Burge, you had the Super Saver that Billy and Eva Finch owned, and then you had the Beard store. And it was really a thriving area. People came from all around to come to the grocery store there. But anyway, we would skip school and go down to Mr. Beard's store and eat lunch. And every now and then we would get caught, and of course, we would lie out of it most of the time.
I would say something. He was my granddad, and he would with Miss Helen, and I don't know how many of you all remember Miss Helen. She'd come down the hill looking for them.
Yeah.
And Granddaddy would let them out the store and have to let them out the back.
But anyway, Miss Pauline, Sis's mother, she said, all right, boys, line up, okay? And we line up. She said, stick your tongues out. And our tongues would be purple. And she'd say, the cafeteria, of course, there was no cafeteria at Kingston then. Back then, you ate your lunch in the gym, and you brought your lunch, or they would fix lunch for you outside. But anyway, and your tongue would be purple from the knee-high breakdown. And she said, we don't have that here in the gym. That's how we would get caught. But it was just, you know, back then, Kingston Springs, being the center of the whole community with the grocery stores, you had Nick Whiter's Garage, you had Bruce's Cafe, which was Judy Bateman's father had built it originally. But Kingston Springs was just really a thriving town in downtown Kingston Springs. I mean, just right here in a small area. I mean, it was just the place to go to.
And our next panelist is Miss Priscilla Doris.
Okay, and I grew up here too. And now, Carl, you got to tell that story. I want him to tell another story before we move on. Kingston Springs was kind of a wild place at one time, and as a matter of fact, Raymond's the first mayor of Kingston Springs' wife, Raymond Meigs, was the first mayor, and his wife was a teacher. And she came to Kingston Springs to teach because she said she heard it was so wild and fun over there. now tell your story.
Well, Kingston Springs was also the center of bootlegging. You had a lot of major bootleggers here because of the good water off Rush Creek and everything. My grandfather was a big bootlegger, Frank Hubman. You had Goble Sullivan. Everybody knows Andy with the cars out here. That was his grandfather. You had Sonny Boy Whiter. You had Sam Macy Cassie. You had Buddy Mays. And there was a lot of whiskey made, but there were a lot of beer joints here. People came to the Springs, where she owns now, and spent the night, you know, from Nashville. But anyway, long story short, there was a beer joint out on Rush Creek, and my grandfather was in there. And I don't know if it was in the 20s or 30s, but he told me a story that there was a man here that lived in Kingston Springs named Fletch de Montgomery. And he was a bully. He was a town bully. And he was always picking on this smaller guy named Bench Proctor. And so anyway, this Fletch de Montgomery was out in the beer joint one morning, and this Bench Proctor walked in and everything. He said, Fletch, you picked on me for the last time. He said, I've come to kill you. And this Bench Proctor was a big man. Y'all know John Haynes, used to wear the overalls and everything, kind of like him. He just reared back, put his thumbs in his straps, said, go ahead. He pulled a pistol out, shot him straight in the heart, killed him. Okay? Well, back then, we're right down at Los Sonic was Squire John Greer. He's the guy that owned all of the property where Woodlands of Harpeth is. Squire. But he was the magistrate here. Well, they had the trial that afternoon. Now, this is and since nobody liked this Fletch de Montgomery, they found Bench Proctor innocent by reasons of self-defense. That was justice in Kingston Springs.
Well, since we're talking about two things, bootlegging and death, I can tell you two stories that have to do with bootlegging. My granddad had the country store, and during Prohibition, of course, the revenue officers were always coming and trying to find steals and break them up. And so they found the steal and they brought it downtown, Kingston, what we call town, and had it on Granddaddy's front porch, on the store porch. And everybody was walking by, looking at the steal, you know. And along comes this man with his little boy, and the little boy says, Paul, they got our steal up there. And there were so many steals around in the woods. intoxicated. That everybody, that you kind of think they were a mad dog, acting a little crazy, but what they just been out of the still and eating what And then Granddaddy had the general store, and back then, general stores sold everything. And I still have legs where when a person would pass away, he would sell coffins, and he would let the people borrow legs to take the coffins to the house to set the coffin on, because there was no such thing as a funeral home back in those days. The bodies were always at home. And he said one guy came and bought a coffin from him one time in the middle of the night and buried his wife in the middle of the night. He always did think he killed her.
Our next panelist is Mr. Bob Sanders.
I can't sit there and tell a bunch of lies. I gotta stand up. First of all, let me tell y'all something. I'm not the only foreigner here. There's another one right here. A foreigner is somebody that was never born in Kingston Springs but moved here. You can live here your entire life. You're still a damn foreigner. So, that having been said, my talk is going to be basically how we got here. We got here because of this great woman right here. My wife and her family knew Ginger and their family and Uncle Ernest. So when we got married, Vicki, we were looking for a house, and Vicki said, why don't we go to Kingston Springs? Well, I knew the area because I ran a soft drink truck at that time, and we used to come down here. Plus, we used to come down to Easter and spend time with her family. So we bought the Crouch's house, Bob Crouch's house up on the hill. Shortly after we bought it, President Carter was in office. Interest rates went to 22. Gasoline went to $1. We had to call. We had to call Bob Clement to get a loan for our house through the Federal Land Bank. So Bob helped get us here too. As soon as we got moved in, I said, well, I sure hope you like this damn place. We'll never get out of this one. So we've been here 36 years, 35, whatever. And I just want to tell you, the community was built on volunteerism and everybody coming together. Y'all all in this room owe yourselves a great deal of applause because you made this town what it is today. I am the youngest guy here as far as being here. Being a foreigner and all that, I just got to tell you, we've been involved through the years. We had the 4th of July picnic down here, as most of you remember, and all of us worked at it. Ginger and their group, they made the city park possible by the very early days.
Civic Improvement Club.
Civic Improvement Club, exactly. But we've always stuck together, and we've always worked with each other to make this town what it is today. A bunch of my beer drinking buddies got together one day, and the money came forth, and we helped build this library up here. We drank Budweiser and wore no shirts and sat around and just had a great time. Y'all might guess I am a Budweiser beer salesman, but anyway, I'd just like to tell you, I appreciate Mike inviting me down. I'm certainly not the one that should have been here. A lot of the great characters of this town have gone. And looking at these pictures, I see a lot of you that don't look the same as you did. I look just as fine as always. But I'd like to thank you for inviting me. And I would like all of you to continue your volunteerism and your true love of this city, because that's what built it, that's what made it, and that's what we will always have. As soon as we build this Walmart, everything will be
Following that up is Mayor Tony Campbell.
After all those stories, I'm not sure I have much. I have a lot of fond memories. My wife and I moved out here in 1977. We've been kind of involved in the town ever since then. One of my earliest memories is putting a mailbox in front of our house in the Woodlands. The mailman came by and put a note in there and said it was located wrong. So I took and wrote another note, telling him where to put it. And I moved. He wouldn't come back. So I went and saw the postmaster. And I went out of town, and when I come back, the mailbox was in the right place. And put it in the right spot. But I've been involved in Kingston Springs for a lot of years. As Bob said, it's all a bunch of volunteers that have come together and worked hard, put the sewer system in, overcame kind of a revolt to do away with the city to keep from having sewer. Just a lot of things. And I'm just really proud to have been in Kingston Springs and part of it. Y'all that are relatively new here have a great town and you need to take good care of it. Thank you.
When the street lights were put in, the Civic Club took care of them. And you paid $1 a month for family. And they had different streets assigned to somebody. My daddy had our street. And one man and his wife kept their money separate. She kept her money and she had his and he had her money. And he'd go down there and she'd give him 50 cents and say, "You'll have to come back to see JD out
Well, that's
By the
a.
way, they're the ones that gave the land for the city park, which is so nice, yeah. And I have a picture of Lucille Burns, it's Lucille Lyles Burns Park, and there's a picture of her back there on the table. And her dad, Dr. Lyles.
They were characters.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great segue. Do any of you have any stories or memories of kind of the early days of the town, or setting up the town, or anything?
Well, we had, like I say, there was an effort to do away with the town, keeping having the sewer system.
Right.
A bunch of people in this room got together and worked hard, and we changed the city commission from 3 to 5 members. Won the election, had a hell of a party and celebration.
Somebody went home in a highway patrol car. I'm not saying. We had those, we saved the city, we saved the charter, and my wife, who loved to party and I like to drink, we just had it out in our backyard. Big old circus tent, and I remember the mayor coming up to us going, "I don't think y'all should do that. There's a lot of division in this community." And my wife said, "Well, y'all go on back down to City Hall. Don't worry about the noise or the music or whatever's going on up here. We're going to do this thing." And like I said, and I'm not bragging about my family because we've done far less than any family here, but anytime there was a need in this town, I hate to keep going back to this. All you had to do was talk to somebody, and there'd be 20, 30 people. The greatest story, and I'm not going to tell any more because we could all go on all night. One night I went out with my college friends and we did some imbibing. My wife had 10 little girls at my daughter's 3rd birthday or something. I don't know. I just said, "I got to get out. I got to go." So I went. So we went out all night and I spent the night at my buddy's house. And I couldn't drive home. So I woke up the next morning, 7 o'clock, and went, "Oh my God, I'm supposed to be down there with a group going to clean ditches and trash." So I go pulling in my driveway. There's 22 people out in my backyard, Mayor Campbell and all of them. I got the shirt tail out, like hair's all up like that. I go in. I was the last one to leave those ditches that day. Didn't want to face the boss and whatever. We cleaned trash till about 7:30 that night. Yes, I did. So it's just, again, we could all go on.
Mike, I want to say something. You know, one of the best things that's happened in the community, and it's this lady sitting here, the newspaper.
That's right.
It's been. We never agreed on a lot of things, especially politics, but she has been a good friend through the years. I've known her a lot of years, and she's really brought the community together, letting everybody know what's going on and everything. And I really appreciate what you've done, Dale, for the community. And I just. Miss Mildred Clark is sitting back there. Her husband had the barber shop for many years in Kingston Springs. And you got Don Ray Stevens over there in the corner, who used to set off the dynamite every New Year's Eve here. And now it would be a careless incident, but everybody can kind of look forward to it. Just go off. You got Candy and Larry Turner, who have ran the junior pro basketball system for 40 years, and I know that was Larry Craig's here, somebody, and Bob Sanders got it started. But that has just been such a tremendous asset for our community and our kids, because when I was going to school, our kids, we had to go a long way to play basketball, and due to their efforts, we got to play in county and close teams, and they helped organize that. I was trying to see.
Skating rink.
And
they had a skating
we had a skating rink. But I mean, there was just so many people that contributed over the years to this being a better community. You know?
Well, that's a good segue. You know, one of the questions I had written down was, do you have a favorite Kingston Springs related story or memory? And it sounded like we've heard a lot. Do any of you have any others you'd like to care to share?
I think it's interesting. Carolyn, you go first. Carolyn has one.
I was just gonna say something. I've got one about my husband. Miss Carrie Street was principal, and he had 4 siblings, and he decided one day he's gonna play hooky, because that's what Carl reminded me of. He got his, he had his fishing, you know, then they had the cane pole and all that stuff. Had his bait and stuff behind the barn. He pretended like he fell down and got his clothes dirty and said, y'all go on to school when you catch the bus. Well, by the time he headed down the road, here comes Miss Carrie. And she said, now, young man, just where do you think you're going? He said, I thought I was going to play hooky and go fishing. He said, I guess I'm going to go to school. So she drove him to school to make sure he got there.
She was the basketball coach, along with everything else. She was a principal, she was a basketball coach. She was everything. She was a good teacher.
She sure was.
She used to put kids in the trunk of that car. Even the top up, and the parents said they would die. They would die. We didn't even think anything about it, because we had to go to the ball game. And she went, and she was big and fat, and she jumped around. She did all this stuff, and she was really good. I'll tell you.
Carolyn mentioned fishing. I've been told that a long, long time ago, suckers, that's the kind of fish, which I don't know if it's
Sucker, yeah. Show,
and
snatching.
everything in town would close down when sucker showed and everybody went fishing.
Go snatch.
Well, another question that I had was, you know, in your estimation, how has the community changed through the years?
Oh, it's changed a lot. Oh, goodness. It's, incorporation has helped more than anything, because all the things that we did had to be volunteers, and everybody was tired. They would just work to death. And the city came in here, and we have good streets, and we have walkways. I see kids walking and riding bicycle and everything, and it's just wonderful that we have all of this. And I'm thankful for it, and I'll tell you I am.
One way it's changed is when I grew up and Ginger grew up, you knew everybody.
Oh,
Absolutely.
You know, it was such a small town, and like if you were too far from your house, they'd just say, sis, you don't belong down here, get back up where you're supposed to be. And nobody thought anything about it, you know. It was much smaller, you knew everybody.
We'd play kick the can, and we'd play all over this town. We'd hide all over town, and it didn't matter. But now you couldn't do that to save your life.
And Easter, we had an egg hunt in Dr. Moore's yard. Everybody went together, and there was a community egg hunt, and everybody came together.
Well, where the guardrail plant is, that was our baseball field. And the Civic Improvement Club, which Ginger was the head of at the time that I came along playing, but that was our ball field. We played there. We had, if you believe it's not, Kingston Springs had tennis courts. J.D. Burns built some tennis courts down there. The guy that had the grocery store where Cheryl Hill owned. But there were some clay tennis courts, if you can believe that, back in the 50s and 60s. And JD'd be down there in his little white shorts and his white shirt, and he'd be playing tennis. And I mean, but we did have some parks then, you know.
He strung his own racket.
Yes, we had.
Gentlemen, do you have anything to add?
We're just, the city, we're just thankful. I'm thankful for, like they mentioned, the roads, the city park. The kids have got a great park down here. The post office came along, and Robert's Tulich made it what it is today. And I just got to tell you, the fire department that we have and the policemen that we have. They're great. I'm probably the only person in this building that's had a ticket written in his own driveway.
Remember, we were long distance with Pegram?
I
just like to say. Long distance, we called Pegram?
Oh, yes, long distance. When we got these, we put on the national phones, it's the best thing.
Yes, ma'am.
I just like to say, we had to march at Action City to get our high school over here.
Yeah.
And everybody went together, and that's the way we got it.
That's sure.
One more question that I've got, and then we'll kind of open it up. We'll take maybe one or two from the crowd. But so someone that's new to the community, you know, you guys have been here for a long time. Obviously, something special about it. Something's kept you here. What should new people to Kingston Springs know and take with them about the area?
How great the schools are.
Yay.
But I promise you, when I was principal of the elementary school, I would have people call me from as far away as California and say, we are moving to the Middle Tennessee area, and we have heard what great schools you have. Tell me about your school. And so
That's what I said.
I must say that.
Well,
And the park is
Parks,
A lot of the town's growth came because of a good school. People moved here, particularly from Nashville.
Well, when I started Harvest Meadows, it was that, you know, we sold people on coming here because of the school system. You know.
I guess my parting shot. You got
And I'll add to that, Ms. Priscilla, because I'm married to Randy Miles, who was conceived here 50-something years ago. And when we connected, I said, he wanted to move, and I said, absolutely not. The school systems are phenomenal there. We're going to have a family there. So I kept him put.
Okay, was there anything?
I was just going to say, you know, the great thing about Kingston Springs has always been that the people, for the most part, have come together and work together to make it a good community. And it is, and I think it'll stay that way. So I'm proud of it.
Well, we've got time for maybe one or two questions from the audience. Does anybody have anything they'd like to ask our bunch? Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question about something that happened in history, and I was too young. It was, I think, in the 70s when Ray Blanton was in office. I lived over on the highway, but I worked down in Kingston Springs. But when the two kids were kidnapped in the woods, and I think it was Mickey O'Brien that found them.
Yeah.
What was that all about? I mean, I was too young to, it was ransom money? Who were the two kids that were kidnapped?
They were from Nashville, if I'm not mistaken.
What the Subachi?
Richard, you know.
Subachi.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah. He was the captain, wasn't he?
He was assistant chief in Nashville, and just one kid, it was just his daughter.
That was his son, it was his boyfriend too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they let him go. They tied him to a tree is what I heard. They kept him up. They had helicopters and everything here in Kingston Springs. It was a real big thing.
Was there any other questions for the panel? Yes, sir.
I know this is a celebration of the town's incorporation, but I wonder if some of our panelists might give some of their memories of when Kingston Springs was more of a train destination, where the hotels were active, that type of thing.
You know, I can tell you how much. If you'd like to.
I can tell it.
Yeah.
But before the hotel, though, I'd like to say, we had, Ginger mentioned when we finally got phones, we had a Mayberry phone system, didn't we?
Oh, it was.
And just like on TV, and we had a telephone operator, Miss Rose. And probably, would you say there might have been 12 phones in the whole town? And they all had to go through, she had one of those switchboards, like on Mayberry. And you know, if you wanted to make a telephone call, you'd have to call Miss Rose, and then Miss Rose would get your number and so on and so forth. And just to show you how Miss Rose kept up with everything, one day, Betty Blackburn had and most of you know who Betty is, had a lunch engagement in town. And one of the boys got sick. So Betty called Miss Rose and said, Miss Rose, would you call the doctor, get the doctor for me? So Miss Rose did. And so the doctor told Betty what she had to do. She had to keep him home and so on and so forth. So Miss Rose said, Betty, you know you're going to a luncheon tomorrow. Don't you want me to call the people having the luncheon? so Miss Rose kept up with everything. But just briefly about the springs, the water in the spring lot, there are various types of sulfur water, and they were supposed to have curative factors about them. So people came at that point in time, up before the Civil War, the train came as far as Kingston Springs, and then people that were coming to the hotel would get on the train, get off at the depot, and the hotel would send a buggy that was called a hack down to meet the people. And I think it was Miss Hazel that told me one time that the girls in Kingston Springs liked to go and watch the visitors to the hotel get off the train because they always had the latest fashions.
Oh, they know it.
And it was quite a ritzy place. As a matter of fact, in the guest book back there, supposedly President McKinley stayed in the hotel when Kingston Springs when the state of Tennessee celebrated its 100th birthday. We celebrated it 1 year later because the state couldn't get it together. It was supposed to be in 1896. It was supposed to be in 1896. The representative over there, Congressman Mike, in 1897 is when we had the centennial, and so. But anyway, it was quite a place to visit, and there were 13 cottages, and it was just strictly a summer place, and families would come and rent a cottage for the summer. And I think I have back there a letterhead or two I have just tons of letters still where people would write and want to reserve rooms, and families would spend the summer in the cottages, and lots of them would spend the entire summer, and the dad would ride the train back and forth to Nashville to work every day. And it operated until around World War I, which is around 1917 or 1918. But the big focus was the curative waters. And they were supposed, if you notice the letterhead, they cured all kinds of things, according to the one of the springs is supposed to be lithium water. And so, you know, I think you take lithium for bipolar disorders, and I used to think, boy, I'd like to take a jug of that out.
We're going to go ahead and I think I'm running up on time, and I just we'll get one last word from each of you, but just want to real quickly thank each of you for coming out and spending your evening with me. There are a couple of really familiar faces that really kind of made Kingston Springs what they are here. Larry Craig is here with us. Larry, longtime city attorney for us. I want to thank the Cheatham County Historical Society for being here as well. Patterson and the Harpeth River State Park. So thanks to both of you. Harpeth Middle School and Harpeth High School both put artwork on the back wall. Make sure you check out what the students did for us on behalf of this, and just thank you guys for coming. Lastly, closing comments.
I want to say something about the phone system. She said there were about 12 phones, and there were. And Miss Rose lived down the street from us, and Daddy had to make long distance calls all the time. And he'd call her, and she'd be out feeding the chickens. And when she came in, she'd call him, and she'd say, "Did you want the operator?" And he said, "Yes, I want to place a long distance call." Well, so many rings was our ring, and so many rings was somebody else's ring, and then she'd place the call. Well, it was so funny because Daddy he would get so nervous he just about to have a fit. So it took her so long to get this band on the phone, but it was fun anyway.
You know, the biggest thing about Kingston Springs and the surrounding area is the volunteerism. We have so many people that help with different aspects, whether it be the art, the Big Brothers. But when I was a kid, people banded together if a house burnt, in which I was the subject. Our trailer burned down, And the first person at my house was this lady sitting here to bring me clothes and food. And Marvin Crouch, I was hoping he would be here
Well,
tonight.
I bet he forgot to come.
Marvin. But the Boy Scouts was an organization here, and Marvin was one in charge of it. And I didn't have the money to buy the uniform, and my grandfather didn't have the money for me to pay the monthly dues. And Marvin Crouch took it upon himself to pay my dues and buy my uniform. And so I'd always been helped and remembered by this lady sitting here, Marvin Crouch, and the volunteerism that we have in this community is just so awesome.
I'll tell a story that I was told not too long ago about a friend who grew up here, and he's no longer, he's retired professor from the University of Virginia, but his dad worked for the railroad, and he was living here during World War II. And they lived where the Lenders now lived on the corner, so they could see the post office. And Randy, I think Hillard was the postmaster at that time, wasn't he? Randy's dad was the postmaster, and Lynn told me that, of course, everybody knew people that had sons and husbands that were away in World War II. And back then, when somebody was killed, lost their life during the war, they notified the postmaster. And Lynn said his mother had all these vines growing up on the porch where nobody could see her, but she could see out. And his brother, or her son, was off at war, and she just constantly peeked through those vines, because if the postmaster left any time other than lunch hour, he would leave and go home for lunch. But she knew if he left at any other time, somebody's son had been killed, and she'd watch which way the car would go. And I just thought that was it's a sad story, but an interesting story, because it just shows how everybody knew everybody and who was off at war.
I've got letters here from World War I and World War II where written from, it just says somewhere in France, because of course they had confidentiality, you couldn't tell where you were, but I've got letters from both, from my uncles and my relatives.
I've said enough, but I just want to tell y'all the characters that some of you have missed. You've missed Ernest Lamprey. You've missed Max Stanley. You've missed Robert Harris. You've missed Charlie Smith. You've missed Kenneth Welch. The list goes, Burl Mays, and Raymond Mays. The list goes on forever, but these people molded a lot of the citizens here into what they are today. Max Stanley could tell you a story, and it would take him 4 days to tell it. I just wish the town, Donald Ray Stephen, I'm glad to hear that. I missed that bomb going off. All the time. I didn't know it was him either. Yeah. But every Halloween, we'd all be waiting around going,
No, it was New Year's.
New Year. Wonder what time.
Yeah, all right.
See, then after he got done doing that, I'd go up here with a few of my
You think all
friends.
fireworks had gone off, and all of a sudden, bam!
We'd ring that schoolhouse bell at about 1 o'clock in the morning sometimes. But the thing like any city, it's a shame that it's disappearing, is that everybody's lives are so busy, and we don't know everybody like we used to. Of course, the town's bigger.
That's right.
The newspaper helps.
But at one time,
Newspaper helps a lot.
she's helped so much in the past. You knew everybody. You knew what their problems were, and if you didn't know, you could call David Clark's wife. She could tell you. But all I ask you to do is, when you leave here tonight, just give each other a big hug and say, let's do this more often. Let's come down and have a big sit-to once a week.
American.
Nothing to add to all of that.
All right, well, how about a big round of applause for our